African Americans, and we must come together and do things about it. It is unfair, even when there is no allegation, in my case, of criminal activity. Harassment comes in numerous ways. Even though the pain of that loss and the way that it happened will never go away, I believe I'm more fortunate than the hundreds of men and women all across the country who are victims of harassment, because I had Congressman Mervyn Dimely to bring me to Washington as his staff counsel and to make sure I had a job once it was all over. Many of them never had that opportunity. And with the lone exception of men and women of Arab descent, I know of no other people who even come close to the kind of media treatment people of African descent get in this country just based upon their race. We must get involved in resolving the problem of harassment. We must close ranks around our leaders, my brothers and sisters, or when they come in the morning, there may be no one left to be involved in our community. I thank you and God bless you. Thank you.
I know that you want to give a hand to all of our panelists because we have witnessed almost a miracle, because we have heard of years of harassment, of thousands of dollars, of hours of struggle, so much in just a short period of time. And so let's give them all a hand of thanks. I'm pleased to present a person who will give us a statement of commitment, who has done a tremendous job, and I'm honored to have worked with her through the years in the YWCA, where she's worked against racism. She's the executive director of the Detroit NAACP, and Joanne Watson is going to share with us a statement of commitment, after which we will open the floor for our discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Height, Congressman Dimely, distinguished officials. I've been honored to have had Dr. Height boss me around. You don't really work with Dorothy Height. She's the only person who can tell everybody what to do, and you have to like it. It's important, of course, that we acknowledge the fact that the individuals who have planned and executed this historic occasion are not going to stop here. The National Interreligious Commission on Civil Rights, the National Commission on Racial Justice from the National Council of Churches, Congressman Dimely, Senator Clarence Mitchell, and the Clarence Mitchell Memorial Fund, all of the entities who have been involved in the planning of all of the hearings, this is one in a series, of course are going to continue to take the message around the country. Of course, they won't have enough money. They won't have enough hours. And of course, they're going to be working with tremendous sacrifice and against tremendous odds. Their commitment is clear because they have come here and laid out their lives for us. And it's not entertainment. This is raw, real racism. The piece that's important for us to look at from within is what is our commitment, those of us who are bearing witnesses, I say, to the harassment that has African Americans around the country in a stranglehold. Our commitment must be to stand collectively, unitedly, and from a position of strength. Our commitment must be steeped and nurtured from a position of power, with self-validation, not letting others determine who is worthy to serve us. Who can determine that but us? We must move beyond the struggle to control. You know, in the NAACP, we often talk about the struggle, and the struggle continues. Well, I don't want my children to still be talking about struggling 10 or even 20 years from now. We need to own, we must have power, we must control where we're going, and we cannot control it as long as we react and allow others to shape our destinies. We must validate our officials, validate our families, validate our communities, validate ourselves by not always responding. The destructive pattern of harassment is a clear and present danger to the African American community, and I submit it's a clear and present danger to all of America. This is not a black issue. This is an American issue. It's a constitutional issue, a civil rights issue. The very fabric of what we consider all that is good about America is within the core of this issue. If we embrace our colleagues, all of our colleagues, and it has been so well said that it is not just them, it is all of us. For every congressperson who's been harassed, I can tell you about a school board member. For every senator who has been annihilated, we can talk about a ward commissioner. It is universal. The universal nature of harassment, and from all that I've heard over the past year, I honestly believe every single person who ever gets their name in any paper, whoever stands up in any meeting, who calls anybody racist, who decides that they might speak out against the Ku Klux Klan or the White Aryan Resistance, you just be sure you are either about to be harassed or you already have been. Our support must be unyielding, unwavering, unshakable, filled with integrity, and we have a personal responsibility. We know we're working against tremendous odds. I lived in Detroit for 35 years, and Coleman Young has been under some level of indictment for every year he's been in office as mayor. I lived in New York for 4 years before Mayor Dinkins came into office. The honeymoon was over. He is the subject of headlines daily in New York City, and tragically, almost tragicomically, Ed Koch has become an elder statesman who was allowed to write editorials about Dinkins allowing crime to come into New York City. In terms of our commitment, those of us who sit here, all I can say is that we know that a number of our brothers and sisters, because we've been socialized to internalize oppression, believe what they read. They've been socialized to accept what they've heard, to internalize the commentary. For those of us who know better, like people in this room, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those of us who know better and do nothing.
Mr. Goodnow, we have a few minutes, and I want to say again that Congressman Dimely urged us to close promptly at 11 so that we can join him and other members of the Congressional Black Caucus for a press conference over on the Hill so that we can let our voices be heard against the enforcement of Graham-Redmond, because it can be detrimental to our whole community as well as to the whole society. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge the presence of he's been referred to several times, and Congressman Dimely mentioned him, Mr. George Brown, former Lieutenant Governor of Colorado, and the Reverend Tyrone Pitts, who is General Secretary of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. And now it's your turn to ask the questions or to make a comment. And if you'll just tell us who you are. Yes.
I'm Dr. Barfield with the National Baptist Convention.
Yes, indeed.
They didn't hear you. I'll need a microphone.
We need you in the mic because we are recording this session.
All right. I'm Dr. Barfield with the National Baptist Convention, and after hearing all these statements this morning, I think we need to get a fund started to reimburse these people for all these legal expenses and harassment and all that. And how could we do that to build a fund? You see, we can't shout high and give low. Do a lot of hollering, but we got to get a basket going to raise some money, help these people out.
Good. We're going to ask Faye Williams to speak to that.
Thank you, my brother. I think you were not here when Congressman Dimely addressed that subject this morning, and he basically said to tell you He ain't holding no more conferences until we're ready to do exactly what you're saying. For 15 years, he has stood on this issue. If anyone wants to contact us in terms of how we can begin to develop that, as much as I hate giving out my phone number, I'll just give you, say, contact me at Congressman Mervyn Dimley's office. All of you know how to do that, and we can talk about it. We're ready.
Let me also say that...
You have to get to the mic.
That's right. I have to get to the mic, too. Let me also say quickly, as you know, I served 15 and a half months in a federal prison camp for what the prosecutors told the jury they thought I intended to do. And I began to look around for help from some fund, and there was none. There was no fund that would address criminal prosecutions, and so we put one together. It's been named the Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. Memorial Fund, one of the co-sponsors of this hearing and this effort. The Clarence Mitchell Jr. Memorial Fund was named after my late father, who gave his efforts to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. We felt it was appropriate that this fund be named for him based on the whole movement's effort is to dismantle the progress we've made for voting rights. So there is a Clarence Mitchell Jr. Memorial Fund put together. We need to begin to raise the resources, and we were through this effort, we're educating people as to the needs so that we can begin to raise the funds.
And I want to remind you that the afternoon session, which will be held somewhere on this floor, is going to deal with strategies, and no strategy has much significance if you don't have some financial resources. Over here.
Good morning. My name is Doretha Washington, and I am the Vice President of the Task Force for Black Political Empowerment in Chicago, which you know is the most racist city in the world. I was formerly the ombudsman to the late Mayor Harold Washington. And one of the things that I can speak to in terms of my own personal experience, in terms of black elected officials, is that many of them have a very serious problem because they want to be fair. And there's no such thing as fairness in racism. They also want everybody to know that they have an open door policy. That if they got a white secretary, a white administrative assistant, or those of such, that in fact, they're going to be all right. The problem is, as I see it in Chicago, is that in the inner circle of Mayor Daley, there are no black folks. And the mistake that we often make is that we always want folk to understand that we're going to be all right. That is in fact not the case, and one of the things that we have to understand and be real clear about it, don't worry about trying to defend your blackness, just be black. And once you understand that, you're going to be all right.
Memphis Commercial Appeal and Scripps Howard News Service. This morning, coincidentally, Congressman Harold Ford of Memphis is in federal court, and with his attorneys fighting an attempt by the prosecutors to move his second trial out of the city of Memphis. I wonder if anyone would care to address the question of change of venue and whether you believe that it is the fairness of moving those trials out of a city or something. If
Anyone like to speak to that?
It's certainly patently and totally unfair. Every other public official accused of an offense is tried by a jury of their peers in the jurisdiction where they are. So if it comes out that a jury of Marion Barry's peers in the District of Columbia instead put the government on trial instead of Marion Barry and found the government guilty of 13 counts, and Marion Barry won. The important thing to understand is that this is again a part of the harassment, a prostitution of Harold Ford's constitutional rights to a fair trial. This shouldn't even be tried again. The jury was 10-2 in favor of acquittal of Harold Ford. And they're going to try him again to break him financially and to try to break his spirit. And we need to let him know we surround you, Brother Harold Ford. We surround you, Brother Floyd Flake, and all of our other officials who have come under fire, and we're ready to march with you.
Thank you. Over here.
Good morning. I'm Joe Delpit from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I can clearly tell you that in Louisiana, we aren't having too many happy days as black elected officials. Throughout the state, we have been harassed for some time. I find it quite interesting that just listening to some of the testimony from the panelists here today of how some of the same types of coincidences just happen to happen around the same time periods. Dick Arrington talked about 1985. Clay talked about the time period what he was talking about. And I can think of my own incident where I was indicted. Didn't even know about it until I heard it on the highway coming from one of my business trips about 50 miles away. Didn't even know what for. A public official for nearly 20 years and didn't even have the courtesy to call me and say, look, we want to talk to you about an allegation of what we think of something is going on. I heard of the indictment that way. I guess all of us have suffered this throughout this United States and certainly look like now internationally. But I'm wondering what if there is any specific one fund, that's one question, that we could start contributing to now. The second question that's interrelated is this fund, if it is one, that we can expand it to allow for the plea bargaining investigation and testimony and legal positions I think we're going to have to deal with. It's obviously a domino effect where they have taken, our federal government has taken the gutter approach by the drug dealer's mentality of we're going to let you sell your drugs as long as you tell us who else that may be selling drugs and have a lot of people investigated for nothing. Is there any type of legal position we could deal with this so-called plea bargaining and the domino effect of testifying against people?
You want to speak to it?
Yes, just as I said earlier, we have put together the fund. We were denied the tax-exempt status by the IRS, understandably so. They're not going to help us get the resources to fight them. But it's important for you to know that the National Council of Churches, through the leadership of Tyrone Pitts and
Kenyon Burke.
Kenyon Burke, I'm sorry, some other things that happened at the same time. Kenyon Burke and Tyrone Pitts have arranged to have what's called a Mitchell Justice Fund in the National Council of Churches. So we will get with you. We're still trying to fight to get that taxes. In the meantime, we do have a vehicle through the National Council of Churches, which has been tremendous in helping us to get this off the ground.
Thank you. Over here.
Pelton, California. It's kind of a sad day when I'm reluctant to identify myself, even though I'm not an elected official, because I don't know if I'm going to be next. But my question is this: has anyone ever considered a countersuit against the government and other agencies for harassment and defamation of character for, let's say, $50 million or $100 million to get their attention?
Mayor Arrington.
I want to take this occasion to quickly speak to several things. Yes, in Alabama, we organized what's called the Alabama Black Elected and Appointed Officials Legal Defense Fund. We have been using some of those funds, of course, to support some 6 or 7 black legislators who have already been tried in Alabama. I think out of the large number you'll see in my report that have been tried in Alabama, only 1 of every 5 had been have been found guilty or convicted. What we are trying to do, we have also hired an investigator, an attorney and some investigators. And you'll see the result of that in some of our reports, and that we have gone out and started our own investigation. Our hope is that we will be able to gather the kind of information that will allow some of us to bring the kind of charge you're talking about. Finally, let me just say this. We need to do all we can on the funds and so forth, but I want to point out there's some other things we ought to be doing. It'll take me just a minute. I think we must expose this harassment. I think it has to be exposed wherever it comes up. It's got to be exposed. We can get together in states and jointly hire legal people and investigators to do it, as we're doing in Alabama. You elected officials you ought to get your files from the FBI. Though they'll be heavily censored, you can get them under the Freedom of Information Act. You will find out a lot about that. I didn't know until 1989 what had been happening to me until 72. You have to get your files. You must file complaints against these people. We have filed complaints with the Senate Judiciary Committee, with the Oversight Committee for the FBI, with the Office of Professional Responsibility. Filed complaints against the individuals who are involved in it. Make them be accountable for their action. Lastly, please don't let the media continue to do what the media have been doing to black elected officials. Make the media report fairly. Make them report fairly. Even if it means we have to organize at the local level, not only withdraw subscription, look at who advertises with them. Put some pickets around places who advertise, and we must make the media deal fairly with us.
Yes, my name is Howard Jetter, and I'm from Berkeley, California. I would like to make a couple of suggestions, and also I would like to maybe get someone to probably second it maybe and get it into action. That's a matter of having an audit and inquest which could be conducted against the Justice Department and any other agency of the government. And we also probably should have taxes, the money that we pay for services, take it away from the Justice Department and use it for defense funds. Another point that we can use, the matter of a 10-year moratorium on all foreign aid, using that money here for the defense of the people who have been conspired against to violate their civil rights and constitutional guarantees. This is what's been going on. We have the law, we have the structure, all we have to do is enforce what we have and make them use the money that we pay their taxes for to defend all of the people. We can do that. This is within our jurisdiction to do it. It's up to us to set the type of legal mechanism in order to carry out this particular concept. Thank you.
One thing, Dr. Haidt, I want to emphasize to you, the purpose of this morning session was to expose the problem. We hope you all will rejoin us at 1 p.m. in the map room. There's a gathering of all of the great famous civil rights attorneys who have come to the fore and are ready to help us plan the strategy. You know, we're always saying we do a lot of talking, we feel good, and we walk away. Please don't walk away. Come back at 1 p.m. and we're going to put together the strategy that we will be able to announce to all of our people. It's going to take many forms. Class action suits, protests. In Detroit, they've already started a boycott of Coleman Young. We went out there, they had a local hearing that started a boycott of the media that unfairly treats black officials and black leaders in that community. And they've also initiated a boycott of those companies that advertise, the advertisers that advertise. We've got to move on all fronts, just like this government. We've got to move like the Navy, the Army, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. And all of us, please, 1 p.m. in the map room, don't forget that.
Well, you can see we have just barely opened up. But a part of our intent this morning was to get information. Because so often, as someone here has already said, people say, well, they must have done something wrong, or there must have been something. Because that's the way we are conditioned. And what we're saying is we need to get the facts, and we've had an opportunity to get information this morning to know that the very nature of harassment does not lend itself to just saying someone must have done something. We need to really look into it so that we'll come to the strategy session at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry to say that we were urged by the congressman to leave promptly at 11 so that we could be down at the Hill. Meanwhile, before you move, Faye Williams has some word for us, and I just want to say thanks again to everybody who participated in this session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just say thank you to Betty Thompson, our timekeeper, to Sandra Pitts, and a special thank you to Dr. Dorothy Hyde and our panelists who've come at their own expense from all across the country. This is not easy, my brothers and my sisters, and we've tried to get in as many as we could. I also want to thank our co-sponsors who are here and who've been with us in New York and Detroit, and will be going next, I believe, to Louisiana for further hearings. Congressman John Conyers has already responded to the resolution that you've heard about from the National Council of Churches to hold a congressional hearing. We look forward to the Government Operations Committee holding that hearing. We will take all of the testimony that we've collected all across the country, and we will share it with Congressman Conyers so that they won't have to start at ground zero. So we're already one up there. All of you who did not have an opportunity to speak, we're opening half an hour early in the map room. Come there. If you can't come there, we brought along our tape player. We want you to tell us your story. If you brought along written documentation, please give that to me before you leave. If you don't have it ready, mail it to me. My testimony, there are copies on the back as well as Congressman Dimley's, and our addresses are on there. But my brothers and sisters, as we close out, I want to say that we must organize, we must mobilize, but as the brother over here said, we must also capitalize, because we have to rid our country of this terrible assault on our leaders. I understand we have Congressman Mfume with us, and we always yield to members of Congress. Do you have something you want to say? We are closing. We can't. You tell them. Okay. Congressman Mfume obviously supersedes anything that I said, so it looks like we're going to be here. And so in that case, those of you who were at the microphone, he is giving us permission to go a few minutes longer. So those of you who were at the microphone in the order you were in, sir, how do you want me to go ahead and handle this? Because we have to stop at any minute. Okay, let's hear from the brother here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. My name is Peb Ali. I'm from the Executive Office of the Mayor Marion Barry. As I listened to the testimony this morning, I felt as if I was there, because I've been in the movement since the 60s, and some of the things that you talked about, like COINTELPRO, I've been involved with that, some things that we've been involved with, and I was very much involved with the mayor and what happened here in the city, and as soon as I went across the country on television, I got a call from some friends of mine in Chicago who knew some personal people with the FBI saying they were going to watch me, and immediately after that I got a letter from the IRS, which I haven't opened yet. But I just want to say, I work very close with Ms. Williams, and I think we need to have some follow-up on this. Those of you who are here, there's no sense in being afraid. They've got you targeted anyway. Let's go ahead and pledge what we're going to do. I think Mayor Arrington said, let's organize across the country. I hope when we leave here this weekend, when we leave this city, we'll know what we're going to do. We'll set up a connection. And the things that we're going to do, let's start doing it, and let's stop being afraid. We've got to stop now, because all of you are targeted.
He's right. Peb Ali, my friend, is correct. We've got to stop now. We have a special guest with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was just talking earlier about the importance we have discussed consistently the importance of bringing together our entire community. Our entire community is threatened, and only in unity can we begin to deal with the enemies. It's important now that we have some remarks. We only have a few minutes left, and certainly the minister understands that he was next door, and we shared in some of his remarks from next door. As outstanding as he usually is. But I would like to, at this time, bring to the microphone, could we have quiet, please? Bring to the microphone the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Please, I'm tired. It isn't that. Let me tell you something. Back in 1963, when Louis Farrakhan, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and certainly I know him well, and he knows I know him well, when I went to Boston to speak for Ken Guscott of the NACP, I'm talking 1964, he was the Imam of the Boston Mosque at that time. I had dinner in his home. We then, in those days, began to discuss the importance of our coming together. So certainly I do know who he is. It's not one of those, but too much is going on at the same time. And we are privileged to have the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan here with us. Please come.
Brothers and sisters, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, and we thank Him for His prophets and their scriptures, and I thank Him personally for giving to us the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, my teacher and leader, and I am so happy and honored, and I don't want you to feel bad. I feel that you paid me the greatest compliment that I could be paid. Thank you so very much, and to the distinguished panel, and to all of you, you have already been sufficiently exposed to the critical nature of this panel and why this panel is absolutely and vitally necessary. We are indeed under attack. And we must respond to attack properly. Brothers and sisters, I don't need to overstate or understate the case. Part of our quest for reparations has to deal with how America has treated and is treating our leadership. To have a child come forth from the mother's womb and somebody purposely damage the head of that child is inflicting irreparable damage on that child. As the head is the most important part of the sperm that makes the child, the head is the most important part of the human being that is made. The head sees, hears, smells, thinks, speaks for the body. If the body is bummified, that's a witness against the quality of the head. If the body exercises itself fully, that is a testimony to the full development of the head. As God has given to us a head on our body that must be cultivated and developed in order to perform its natural and divine function, God also gives to people leadership. That leadership is born out of the need of that people to achieve certain goals and objectives. When the leader is born, the leader looks like any other baby. But when the leader is developed, that leader begins to speak to the critical needs of a people so that the people may be moved forward toward fulfilling the objective of the Creator. The Creator never made us to be slaves of white people. Let's get that very clear. Now, and the Creator never made white people to be slaves of anybody else. He made us all to live in the light of freedom, to understand and enjoy justice, and to work hard to qualify ourselves to be equal. Now, when a people are enslaved, they are deprived of a natural right, freedom. They're deprived of justice, and they're deprived of equity. These three principles undergird not only human nature, but they undergird the universe. All right? Now, whenever we are deprived of these principles, it sets up a longing in the breast of the people for the satisfaction of these vital principles. So out of that longing, a womb is filled with a seed. And that seed gives birth to not a made leader, but one born to serve the needs of his or her people. Do you follow what I'm saying? But now when you are a slave master, I want you to listen carefully to what I'm saying. I'm not going to be long. Don't worry. I'm not going to be long. I'm not going to be long. But I really want to thank you for allowing me and inviting me even to have an input into this. And I want to thank first Congressman Mfume for inviting me to the CBC weekend, and I want to thank the conveners of this panel for the privilege you have extended to me. Congressman Diamond, this is his panel? Thank him on behalf of Brother Farrakhan. Now let me get back and finish what I was saying. Now, whenever one is a slave master, the slave master understands the principle. So the slave master is always watching to see which of the slaves is demonstrating that quality of leadership. America set this thing up not for us to be equal citizens, but for us to be perpetual servants or slaves of a system that never was set up to give us freedom, justice, and equality. Hold on. Now, any of you who wish to take issue with me, I would be glad to deal with any scholar or scientist, and I know it won't take long to show you that exactly what I'm saying is the absolute truth. It's not just a truth, it is absolute. You can't do anything with it because it is the truth. The educational system is set up to cripple the minds of those who would lead. Are you listening? The religious system is set up to misdirect those who show spiritual leadership qualities. Did you hear me? The economic system is set up to crush economically those who have the will to lead, the strength to lead, but they'll make sure you never get the money to lead. The system of jurisprudence is the hanging tree for the leaders that show the earnest, sincere desire to lift the condition and quality of life of the race or the people. Now let's go to the Bible, Quran, and actual facts, and we can quit. Pharaoh was a slave master, but Pharaoh knew time was about to produce what? A leader. The leader, he didn't know his name. His name was Moses. But Pharaoh knew the principle. Pharaoh knew that the leader would be a man. Pharaoh then set up a law or rule to kill all the boy babies. Any resemblance is not a coincidence. To kill all the boy babies, so that when they would kill the boy babies, they would kill the leader that time said was ripe to lead. That leader was Moses. And so Moses had to be hidden from the evil plans of Pharaoh. Is that correct? But Pharaoh was watching. Look in the New Testament. Herod was watching. He knew it was time for the Messiah. They didn't want a Messiah to interfere with their political agenda. So they sent out a decree to kill all boy babies from 2 years old and under so that they could get the anointed what? Leader. Now in America, come bring it right home. America watches for talented ones of us who have a heart to see our people uplifted. At first, they will try to misdirect the talent. And by misdirecting, meaning you will develop the stature of a leader, but you will never develop the fruit of a true leader. You will have money, you'll live in a nice home, you'll be called leader, but you won't be leading people except into the net of the same one who has misdirected and captured you. Listen now, they give you perks in religion, perks in politics, if you play ball with the established order that is designed to kill your true leaders. And that's why those who have been in privileged positions have always been the opposition, the leading opponents of the true leaders that came from the masses of the people. Marcus Garvey was a true leader. He came from the masses of the people, but he was opposed by the classes because the classes had been made to think they were the leaders. But they were only leading the people right back into the lap of the same slave master. Oh, brother and sister. Do you hear me? Now, brothers and sisters, move this right to a conclusion. When you see W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a brilliant thinker, ever growing, ever rising to higher heights of intellectual genius. When you saw a man like that having to leave America to die in Africa, and there's no monument to that man's genius in America, but they built a monument for him in Ghana, but he worked for us. Paul Robeson, a genius, not just a singer of song, but a man whose heart bled for the pain of his people. So as he traveled the world, he was searching for philosophy and ideology that would free his people. And when they called him communist and lambasted him, that man was ruined. And he died in Philadelphia a little over 15 years ago, around 76, 14 years ago. He died dispirited, broken, because he lived for us. He fought for us, but he was destroyed by this system because they feared what his brilliance might ultimately bring to us. Now let's move on up from a man like Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois to the civil rights movement. Here, this was leadership that wanted to see justice for us, but within the society, to mainstream us. But even that was considered dangerous. And the day after Dr. King in this city delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, a letter was sent, a memo was sent to the head office of the FBI calling Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the most dangerous Negro in America. What made him dangerous? He had influence. And if you start developing influence, and then you are not going in the way that the slave master feels is beneficial to them, then they move on you. Now, you know the counterintelligence program of J. Edgar Hoover moved on all our leaders in the 60s, weakened all our organizations in the 60s. And as we got civil rights legislation and voting rights legislation passed, then we got now 24 members, or 25, is it? 24 members in the Congress, which is nothing. Don't get happy. We are happy over them. But if you compare the population of blacks to the population of Jews, Jews are less than 6 million. We are more than 30 million. The Jewish community has 27 congressmen and 7 senators. We don't have a senator, and we have 24 congressmen. And they are under constant pressure. So much so that many of our people who want to get in politics, they know now that they will be hounded, and many of them can't take the pressure, so they just back out of this thing. But I thank God that we've learned enough now to see that the system has seen that there's such pervasive knowledge, consciousness now, till they have to develop a pervasive net to catch black strength in leadership. And so these that spoke to you today, who know the suffering of black elected officials, understand why they're suffering. They're suffering because they demonstrate influence, they demonstrate a love for black, and they demonstrate an unwillingness to be controlled. And therefore the courts of America have been used successfully to hang our leaders, but they crucify them first. Crucifixion in the Bible is not a mistake. It is actually the plan of a government against the best leaders. You crucify them. You strip them naked, meaning take away their followers. How do you do that? You first have a trial, and you bring the accused before the courts, and you falsely accuse them. And because government has awesome power and influence, you frighten people to say things that they wouldn't ordinarily say to save their own backs. You'll find a Judas in the family. You'll find a Judas in the organization. You'll find somebody willing for 30 pieces of silver or the promise of elevation. And then the government indicts you. Indictment is nothing but a charge. But to black people who have been less than sophisticated in the past, the charge is like we're guilty. So your friends begin to fall away from you. People that you think would stand with you under an indictment, they say, well, I can't. The old dinner engagements, you don't get them anymore. The old friends that used to party with you, they don't invite you to the party anymore. You become like a skunk. Everybody begins to smell danger. Or you have spiritual AIDS. Nobody wants to kiss you anymore. That's stripping you through lies. Then they take you to Golgotha, but they make you carry your own cross. And when they get you to Golgotha, they nail your hands. They make your hands, your helpers, ineffective. They nail your feet so you can't move. They pierce you in your side. They put a crown of thorns on your head and let you hang there so that your friends see you hanging naked. They see you defecating on yourself, urinating on yourself, because there's no toilets on the cross. That people walk by and said, I thought you was something. And then in the 11th hour, you about to give it up. You say, Father, why have you forsaken me? You give up the ghost, meaning you give up the will, the spirit to fight for your people, to fight for justice. Then they take you down and deliver you for burial. They may break your legs after they take you down, meaning that nobody ever will support your ideas. Martin King is dead, but the idea lives. But as long as nobody supports the idea, then Martin King becomes a picture on the wall, a highway sign of Martin Luther King Drive. Malcolm X becomes by any means necessary slogan, and Marcus Garvey becomes the man who fought for Africa, for the Africans at home and abroad. But the body of knowledge that these men represented, they break your support for the idea, and that's why there's no continuity from one generation to another in struggle. Because the idea of the leader is broken. It is not that those leaders did not think that they would one day die and prepare people to carry on. But when the support for the idea is broken, then the children that would take up the baton of leadership have no mooring, no guidance, because the idea has been criticized and destroyed. This is the plan today. But something has happened. Black folk are getting much more knowledgeable. And white folk are saying, my God, something is happening. We tried to get Harold Ford, and we got a hung jury. We tried to get Al Sharpton. We had him on 67 counts and couldn't make one stick. We tried to get Mayor Barry. We had him, we caught him in the room. And we showed him all over the television and all over the world, but we couldn't make the charges stick. Something is going on. We got Imelda Marcos and we got Adnan Khashoggi, but we couldn't make the charges stick. So the courts are not the hanging tree that they used to be. So they're going back to the old method now, killing you outright. But the way they kill you is they make your own people turn. They ferment trouble in your communities, turn your people against you, discredit you, and have your own kill you and say, well, it was just an internal problem. We had nothing to do with that. So as the last speaker said, we are all in trouble. Any one of us that are sincere for our people, you're going to be rounded up. Don't even worry about it. That's your duty. Your destiny is the cross. But unless you go to the cross, you won't be worthy of the crown. Unless you can take it. The government is now preparing to move on Farrakhan. And I laugh at the government. I laugh at you. Because I was born for the cross. And I'm born for the crown. Ain't no way that the government will destroy what I represent. I'm anxious to fight. I never was born to be no masquerading man. I was born to do and be what I am. And I will never compromise, because the born person can't compromise. There ain't no compromise in a man born for his people. Because I remember when everybody will forget, I remember the cry of the slaves. I remember the horror of the Middle Passage. You may forget, but I can't. You may want to lay down with the enemy, but I can't. Not until justice rolled down the mountain like rivers. May God bless you as I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
That concludes this panel discussion entitled The Harassment of African American Elected and Appointed Officials, sponsored by the 20th Annual Legislative Conference of the Congressional Black Caucus. Join us Monday for a special Election 90 live gubernatorial debate from the Constitution State of Connecticut. You will meet all three candidates, former U.S. Senator, now independent candidate Lowell Weicker, the Democratic candidate Congressman Bruce Morrison, and the Republican candidate Congressman John Rowland. That's all live Monday beginning at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. on the West Coast. Up next, the President of Turkey.